It's a new week and a new campaign ad to put to the truth test. The one I'm verifying today, a lot of you have been asking me about it. Polly writes, could you verify Adam Putnam's claim Florida is spending millions on illegals in our prisons? Marilyn emailed me and asked, Adam Putnam is running an ad saying that $100 million has been spent on housing illegal immigrants. Is that number for Florida or the whole U.S.? If you don't know which ad we're talking about, let's take a look.
There are many reasons to be mad about illegal immigration. Here's one we can't stand for. Today, taxpayers in Florida are paying nearly $100 million a year to imprison criminal illegal aliens.
If you're not familiar with Adam Putnam, he's currently Florida's Commissioner of Agriculture, but he wants to be the next governor. In the ad, he describes himself as a conservative Republican who is tough on illegal immigration.
I'm Adam Putnam, and we need to support President Trump's plan to secure our borders and ban sanctuary cities. We need to protect taxpayers and deport violent criminals now.
So how did Putnam's campaign come up with this $100 million price tag? I contacted his campaign and they showed me the math. Okay, I'm about to throw a lot of numbers at you. In fact, if you're like me and you were never that great at math in school, get your calculators out because I'm about to break down every number. First, they started with a percent of what they say were, quote, criminal illegal aliens in Florida's prison population. That equals 4.8%, according to an article from the Miami Herald. Total corrections budget for the same year as the data equals $2,331,211,880. 4.8% of $2,331,211,880 equals $111,898,170. The other way they calculated it, average cost to incarcerated inmate for a year is $55.80 a day, or $20,367 per year. They used the Florida Department of Corrections as a source for those numbers. They say the number of criminal undocumented immigrants in Florida's prison population is 4,754. They use the Miami Herald as a source for that information. 4,754 inmates times $20,267 equals $96,349,318. But does the math add up? First, let's start with the Florida prison system's definition of an alien inmate. In their annual report, an alien inmate is defined as one who does not have U.S. citizenship. Well, just because someone is in the country without U.S. citizenship, it doesn't mean that they're here illegally. They could have a green card that would give them clearance to work or live in the United States. So this may seem like a minor fact, but we can't verify how many of the 4,754 inmates quoted by Putnam are actually here illegally. Also, over the past 5 years, the Department of Corrections says the number of immigrant inmates has declined. Putnam quoted the 2016 numbers. In 2017, the number decreased by 112 inmates. Not a huge difference, but about a $2 million change in the price tag. So, is $100 million of your tax dollars going to feed, clothe, and house illegal immigrants? Well, it's really hard to say because there's still some unanswered questions about the classification of immigrants in the Florida prison system. And even if there were no immigrants behind bars, that would only eliminate a small percentage of the Florida Department of Corrections budget. So is there another political ad you would like for us to verify? Just send an email to verify@firstcoastnews.com.